You're listening to a segment of the Inside Rock podcast on IWW Radio, Niagara Falls. Go to jabberguys.com to hear the full episode, as well as other Inside Rock episodes with Oat,
Queeks,
and Cha,
the Jabberguys. Welcome back to another episode of Inside Rock. On this episode, we're going to be talking about memorable moments from the 60s. We're going to be breaking down memorable moments from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. But this show, we're just going to focus on the 60s, Volume 1.
Yeah, the 1960s, that was one troubled decade. Civil rights movement, the Vietnam War, anti-war protests.
Assassinations.
Yeah, JFK was assassinated in the 60s. And then the term generation gap evolved in the 60s to separate the flower children from the establishment. And there was a lot of protests that happened.
Far out, man.
When you guys bring any weed,
That would be groovy.
so we can get into this properly.
Yeah, okay, I'll leave that to you guys.
And you sure that you said troubled times?
Yeah.
Really?
Why?
Well, everybody was smoking pot back then.
Well, it was not only pot, but LSD was predominant too.
So anyway, there's a lot of history to cover here. Now we can't cover everything, but we got a lot of points here we want to review.
So what do you want to start off with?
Well, in 1962, we're jumping a little bit. But Joan Baez debuted in 1960. He was inspired by Bob Dylan, right? Folk singers. But speaking of female singers really dominated the charts in the early 60s, including Little Eva, Connie Francis, Brenda Lee, the Crystals, the Shirelles, Mary Wells, and the Marvelettes. There's tons.
That's quite a list.
Oh yeah, no, they were.
They had quite a few songs in the top 10 too.
Oh yeah, absolutely, they did. And then Phil Spector came around. Everybody knew who Phil Spector is. He's a huge record producer, and he formulated the wall of sound, and it really changed the way a lot of bands were recording in the studio. It basically was multi-layers of instruments that you wouldn't think would go with one another, but he would overlap them, like a electric guitar and a mandolin. Just as an example, like he was very creative in the way he produced, and had a lot of success with it in a lot of bands.
What wasn't the backup band? They're called the Wrecking Crew.
Right. The Wrecking Crew were a group of session musicians that were like they've recorded more records than anybody in the history of music. They were that popular.
Even more than the Stones?
More than the Stones.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Wrecking Crew worked on a lot of things you probably don't even realize, like TV theme songs, and they were part of the backing band for the Partridge Family. They did the theme song from Happy Days. Stuff like that you wouldn't even realize. Session musicians, really good group.
Well, they must have made a lot of money.
Oh, well, yeah, but you know what? The industry back then, how much did they really make? But but they're a great bunch of talented guys, no doubt.
Anyway, speaking of producers, you have to mention Berry Gordy. Hitsville, USA. Berry Gordy started off. Actually, he was a former boxer, and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was a boxer, and he decided to start this label. And but during the 1960s, Motown achieved 79 records, 79 in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 between 1960 and 1969.
That's huge.
Just from Motown Records.
That's huge.
One of the things I think of the 60s, because majority of the 60s, I wasn't even born yet. The one song by the Kingsmen.
Oh, yeah.
Louie Louie.
Yeah.
Louie Louie.
Yeah, their one hit. It wasn't even a hit when they released it.
No.
Didn't become popular till later.
Yeah, that's right. Or what is it? I think it cost the band $50, and they ended up splitting the cost to record that song.
Now, was that the Kingsmen or was that somebody else?
That was the Kingsmen. was a Kingsman.
Because the rights, Richard Berry wrote the original,
He did.
and then he sold the rights to a whole bunch of different bands who re-recorded it,
Yes.
right?
Well, and the Kingsman wasn't even, they weren't the originals of that song.
No. They got some of the rights and recorded it. In fact, the original single from Berry only sold about 40,000 copies. And then he...
Do you know how many the Kingsmen sold when it was released? 600. 600.
600. Yeah, that's not quite enough for platinum, is it?
Not quite.
No. What do you think of, to be honest? Like some songs.
Oh, just Animal House.
Animal House.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's what I think
I'm
of
serious.
too.
Like they couldn't have picked a better song for that one spot.
Oh,
in that
for
movie.
sure. So the lead guitarist and vocals was Jack Eli.
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That version, nobody knew what the hell he was saying.
No.
Well, because of those indecipherable lyrics when it was first released,
Yeah.
the FBI got a little suspicious and launched an investigation because they thought there was some type of hidden message.
They played that song backwards, forwards, different speeds. They didn't know what the fuck he was saying.
And we still don't know what he's saying.
Like how much time did the FBI have on their times to be worried about this song?
I think they were listening to the record and smoking weed at the time.
Apparently, Jack Eli had to stand on a stool to reach
Yes.
the microphone. And he had braces at the time as well. So the braces, him reaching for the microphone, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to defend him, but no one knew what he's saying.
Yeah, no one knew. And the Kingsman version, when it had national popularity, like it was just huge nationwide, the band had already split.
Yeah, I know.
Did you know why it had national popularity? It was on a radio show.
Well, I remember they played it as
One of the worst songs. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody loved it.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It had an adverse effect, so good for them.
You know, it seems like they like that $50 budget. It seemed like they just threw this song together, just first shot, and just recorded it because
There's an error in there.
There was an error.
Yeah.
He started coming in singing too early at one
right.
spot. Then he stopped, but the band just kept going, and they just left it the way it was.
The drummer filled the gap.
Yeah.
And it worked, though, right?
And you know what? When other bands do this song, some of them actually repeat that error.
They do because they thought that's how it's supposed to sound.
It's a classic part of the song.
That's
is
awesome.
classic.
You know how many versions of that song there have been? 4,000. 4,000 versions of Louie Louie or Louie Louie.
4,000 different bands have tried it.
Different versions. Yeah.
Different versions.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's a great
They
tune.
say it's one of the most recorded songs in music, in rock.
It's because you don't need to know the words. Cha, you got this one, I think. About Phillips and the compact cassette tapes. When did they come in?
I mean, when did they come in? Aren't they still in?
Well, for you, they are.
1962, Phillips invented the compact cassette. That's what it was called back.
And
the
before
compact
that, there was LPs.
Yes.
What do you mean before that?
I know. Still, you still listen to your LPs.
Are they out now? What happened?
Yeah, LPs and 8-track tapes.
I just bought a record today. 22 Explosive Hits by K-Tel. Classic. I'm just saying, great stuff. All right, let's go.
Well, I mean, yeah. The compact cassettes, they gave rise to the mixtapes, right?
Love the mixtapes.
Yes. Well, originally when the compact cassette came out, they weren't like we couldn't, or the general public couldn't record on them.
No, they just
You had to buy it with information on it.
Yeah, that's right.
Then later on, and when you could record on it, well, that was the best.
Oh yeah.
That was the best, making mixtapes. And I remember we used to try to do some edits to mix some songs or change them up a bit with the tape decks.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, for sure.
Whenever I think of mixtape, I think of awesome mixtape number 1.
What, Guardians of the
From
Galaxy?
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And actually, from that list of the 12 that are on that mixtape, there's only 4 that are really from the 60s. The rest are from the 70s and after.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah. Hooked on a Feeling, originally done by B.J. Thomas, 1969.
Got that on vinyl.
Spirit in the Sky, Norman Greenbaum, 1969.
Yeah.
I Want You Back, again, 1969, Jackson 5, which didn't become a number one hit for them until 1970. And then Ain't No Mountain High Enough, 1967 by Marvin Gaye.
There you go.
Tammy Terrell.
Good stuff.
Actually, the blank cassette was in 1964. I just looked at it in 1964.
The blank, so you could record your own, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we had a ton of fun doing our own mixtapes.
For sure.
Yeah, we did. When you think of like the cassette, the big game changer I can remember or think of was the Sony Walkman.
Yeah.
Like to bring it with you when you're walking around.
Yeah.
A mixtape.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Right now, there's a bunch of young people listening to this going, how old are these guys?
I know. They've got 6,000 songs on their phone.
Well, just remember, I'm the youngest.
Yeah. Or even just Spotify.
Yeah, for sure. There's a plug for Spotify.
Yeah, you can listen to us on Spotify.
There you go.
Anyway, so let's jump to 1964.
I'm not done talking about cassettes.
Aren't you?
I remember I was an audiophile, and Creeks, you could appreciate that.
Yeah.
I remember there was a tape deck. I used to have a subscription to this magazine. It just every month came out like all the tape decks and turntables, their prices, their ratings and everything. I remember there was a Nakamichi tape deck that it was like over $2,000. It was around $2,000, and back then, like that was the ultimate, right?
Nakamichi. Not that I remember that brand, but
You don't?
Nakamichi?
Were you smoking weed at the time?
I don't smoke weed.
That was awkward.
I'm convinced.
That was very good. Anyways, I just remember looking at the tape decks. The Nakamichi, I just remember, was so expensive. Everybody wanted it, but apparently except for you, Tweaks.
Nakamichi. Sounds like something out of Die Hard, the tower. What was that? Nakatomi.
Oh shit! Is that what I'm thinking about? Oh well. Oh, let's continue.
That's great.
Are you done with the cassettes now?
I guess.
Anyway,
Hey, you know what I found? Hold on.
Okay, we're not done.
Do you know what I found?
What?
I found your mixtape of Van Halen.
Really?
Yeah. Found it in Dad's attic.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's up there on audio cassette. Van Halen, and in big letters it says "Keep this" with exclamation marks on it that you wrote.
That is awesome. Yeah. Was it on a chromium dioxide tape?
It wasn't metal. I think it was chromium dioxide. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the metal tapes, they were expensive, boy.
Well, they would last forever, but the chromium dioxide would disintegrate. And being up there, it's probably disintegrated.
There you go.
Well, it's the type of metals too on the tape. There were more. The metal was a more magnetic. I'm not going to get into technical terms because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But it was just better.
It was better. It sounded better.
Yes.
Can I talk about 1964 now?
Oh, okay. Let's move on.
If you must.
All right, 1964, February 9th, 1964, The Ed Sullivan Show, The Beatles, their first appearance. The
British invasion.
The British invasion, yeah, the Beatles came on. And I Want to Hold Your Hand would climb up to number 1 on the U.S. Charts the month after they appeared on Ed Sullivan. It was unprecedented when they went there. Usually you go on the Ed Sullivan Show and Ed Sullivan would say, okay, you come on my show, I'm not paying you anything. You get the exposure, which is my contribution. The Beatles were one of the very first acts that demanded a $10,000 appearance fee. And they agreed to it if the Beatles would come back 3 times. So the Beatles actually appeared on Ed Sullivan 3 times through the 1960s.
Right on.
Ed Sullivan, isn't that the guy that's like, we're going to have a really big shoe?
That's him.
That's him. That's him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, getting off topic a little bit. Well,
Back to cassettes?
No. Oh. The Doors, when they appeared on Ed Sullivan said, it gave him strict instructions for Light My Fire. And the line is, baby, you couldn't get much higher.
Yeah.
He said, you can't say higher. It's like it implies that it's something to do with drugs. He wanted him to say better. So Jim Morrison agreed and goes on. What does he do? Just sang it the way he wanted to.
Yeah, good for him.
And then Ed Sullivan banned him from the show.
Thanks for listening to this segment of the Inside Rock podcast. To hear the full episode, go to jabberguys.com and listen to our episodes with
Queeks
And Cha.
the Jabberguys.
Remember to go to our website, jabberguys.com, to subscribe to our podcasts, Inside Rock and Weird and Wacky World.